Hello, my name is Nathaniel Thoreson and I am the co-founder of DropChain. Now before we get started, I first just want to thank you for being here. We're so excited to be part of your Web3 journey and really can't wait to see what you build using these tools. Now if you haven't already, I highly recommend that you join our Discord server. You can find the link to that at the bottom of the page, and in the server you can connect with me and the rest of the DropChain team, as well as other builders in the DropChain ecosystem. It's a really good time and I highly recommend that you join. So now, on with the video. In this video, we are going to be going through the entire DropChain API Quick Start Guide. Now in this, we're going to be showing you around the DropChain console, as well as sending your first API requests and really just getting familiar with the platform that you're about to dive into. So if you would like to follow along with me throughout this process, which I recommend that you do, I'm going to be following our documentation, our quick start guide in our documentation, which you can find at this button right here. Click on the quick start, and later on, I recommend that you go through all of this documentation, but for now, we're just going to start here. All right, step number one is to create your account on the DropChain developer console. So you're already done. Step number one is complete. Let's go on to step number two. Step number two is really important, where we're going to be getting our API key. We're going to be using this throughout the testing process, so this is really an important step. Now, whether you are a full code programmer or a no code warrior, you're going to need this regardless. So whatever you are, a programmer or a no coder, you're gonna need to generate an API key. Now to do that, let's head back to our console and click on the API dashboard here on the side. Now we can scroll down just a little bit and you'll see the section on our API keys here. Now to create a new API key, just click on the button right here, Generate API Key. Now what's really important to note is that this is pretty sensitive information and you're not going to want to share this with a lot of people or anybody really. So we've blurred out, or we've gotten rid of the visibility on your previously made API keys. So just for security purposes. So it's really important that you grab your API key and you save it someplace that you have access to it, but it's safe. You're going to be using this API key throughout the entire testing process, so it's really important that you don't lose this and you keep access to it. So copy it, bring it over to wherever you store your sensitive information, and keep it there. Very important. So now we have our API keys and we can go on to the next step. Step number three is pretty simple. We're just going to be exploring a little bit more at our test accounts. Now, when you created your account on the DropChain console, where you are right now, we automatically created these test accounts for you. As you're building and testing and demoing your product, you're gonna need a transaction or wallet addresses to be able to send transactions to, and that's exactly what this is. So for each of these 5 users, we've included a user ID and a wallet address. So it's really important that you hold on to these and come back to the section often, because you'll need these very frequently throughout your testing process. Step number 4, we are on to the fun part. We are now going to be making our first API request. But before we actually start playing around with the API, we first need to give one of our test accounts some test tokens to be able to test transactions with. So we're going to be using Algorand's tools and the testnet algo by sending some testnet algo to our test user 1, so we can start to facilitate transactions with the DropChain API. So to get started, let's click on this link here, which will bring us to the Algorand dispenser and testnet faucet. Again, this will just be sending some testnet algos to test user ID 1. So we'll prove that I am not a robot, and like it says in the documentation, we're gonna go back here, grab our wallet address of test user 1, head back to the algo dispenser, and click paste and dispense. It will load and we have a success message right here. This is the transaction ID that we're able to copy. And if we want to make sure that this actually went through and Algorand testnet knows that it went through, we can go to the testnet algo explorer and verify that it went through. So we copied that transaction ID. We're going to paste it here. And you can see that we did in fact receive 10 testnet algos, and that was sent to test user 1. So now test user 1 now has some testnet algos that we can start to use in our API to play around with different API endpoints. So let's go on to that next step now. Now, if you can't already tell, DropChain has tools for both full programmers who know how to develop from scratch and people who are more no-code savvy. And as it says in this documentation, there's a number of ways to do it on the programming side with curl, Python, JavaScript, or Node.js, C#, a number of different options to whatever your favorite framework is. But for simplicity of this video, we're going to be going down the no-code route using a tool called Postman. Now, if you don't know anything about Postman, you first just need to create an account, which you can do by clicking right here. It's completely free and you can get signed up in a couple of seconds. Now that you've created an account in Postman, you can click on this link right here, which will bring us over to a template of getting started with the DropChain API and sending our first API request. So once we are here, we can click on fork, which is basically just making a copy. You can test or you can name it whatever you would like, but I'm just going to keep it as is and click on fork collection. Next, we have to pass in some data to this template to be able to actually test out the API. So to do that, we're going to click on variables right here. And here you can see a pretty simple table where we're just going to be filling in the information that's corresponding right here. The DropChain API key, app ID, and some test user accounts. So let's head back over to the console and we'll copy these values in. Now we are back in the console, and the first thing we need to grab is our API key. So just like we did down here, again, this is now hidden. So you have to make sure that you had already copied your API key and saved it somewhere safe, which I did. And on a different screen here, I am going to copy my API key and bring it back over to Postman. And we're going to be pasting it in the current values section here, and make sure to get rid of any extra spaces or breaks, and just paste it on in here. Don't worry about the initial value for now. So now let's do the next thing with the app ID. You can find that right here, right next to your project name. We'll bring that over. Next is test user ID 1. So we're not going with the wallet address this time, just the user ID. So that's number 1, and then grab number 2. And again, be sure to get rid of any spaces or breaks or anything like that. So now that we have copied this information over, we are just going to click save right here, and that will save it. Next, on the left-hand side here, you're going to see the post send algo testnet button right here. Click on that and the screen will change here. And now we just have to click send. Now, if we are successful, in the documentation, there's an example of something that you should see, but we'll just wait to make sure that the API request goes through, and we'll see if we were successful. Okay, now it looks like the transaction went through. Now, to verify that we set this all up correctly, the receiver address should be the wallet address for test user 2. Let's make sure that we see this. So the receiver address ending in Z or SZBA. Let's go over and see test user 2, wallet address SZBA. Perfect. So it looks like our transaction went through, and we sent some testnet algos from test user 1 to test user 2, and it all went through without a hitch. Congratulations, you have now sent your first API request using the DropChain API. Now, if you want to actually verify that this went through on the blockchain, again, this was on the Algorand testnet, we can take this transaction ID here and do the same thing that we did with the Algorand testnet dispenser. Let's copy this transaction ID. Let's head back over to the Algorand testnet explorer and paste this on in here. And again, we can now see that test user 1 has sent 1 algo to test user 2. Congratulations, that's how easy it is to get started with the DropChain API. And we encourage you to go on to the next video where you can see how to mint NFT collections on the DropChain marketplace, which is really exciting. And the final video on this page will walk you through how to actually build your very first DropChain powered Web3 app. So thank you again for being here. We're so excited that you're here and we can't wait to see what you build. Happy building.